Hello and welcome to Town Hall. I am your host, Meredith Lilly. First, I just want to say thank you, all the viewers weekly that have been checking out this show. It has been a wonderful ride, and I just hope that you are learning so much. The goal of this show is to be an inspiration, but also to be a tool of information to take back to our community. And so today we have a very important show. I want you to call your friends, call your family, get everybody around. I need everyone listening to the show today. Today we'll have a show that talks about a disease that has killed over 200,000 Americans. On top of that, Black Americans are dying at this disease more than anybody at alarming rates. So today I have two guests that I want to welcome on to talk about this just horrible disease. Dr. Celeste Willis, family medicine physician, and Dr. Lisa Fitzpatrick, infectious disease doctor and public health experts. Welcome, ladies. Welcome to Town Hall.
Hello, thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. And I know a lot of this show has been centered around the importance of voting. And you know, the coronavirus is tied into all of that, honestly. And we'll get to the importance of voting toward the end of the show. But I just want to start off talking about this serious disease. And so the first question is just for people that just still don't know, they watch it and they see the numbers, they see the people that are dying, but they still are confused about what it really is. What is the coronavirus? Lisa, we can start with you.
Yeah, the coronavirus is actually, so just in general, coronaviruses have been around for a long time. There are several strains of coronavirus that cause the common cold. So it's not that coronavirus is new, it's that this strain of it is new and it's behaving in a way that's unusual for coronaviruses. So the coronavirus we're seeing now, SARS-CoV-2, causes a disease called COVID-19. And it's, the challenge is it doesn't behave the way most coronaviruses behave because people get sick. And we're seeing about 30% of people who actually don't show any symptoms. So that creates a huge concern.
Okay, so let me say this then, and one of y'all can answer this. So if you go in, I've taken tests because I've been traveling, working on campaigns and traveling across. So I've taken a test, and if the test comes back positive, do you say I have COVID-19 or do you say I have the coronavirus? Let's get that straight first, because I hear so many people saying different things. So what do you say?
If you are positive, then you have COVID-19. It's a specific test. Specifically, the standard PCR is the one that we probably like the absolute most. And it's specific for SARS-CoV-19. So it's COVID-19. It's not just a simple coronavirus.
Okay, thank you. Okay, because it's so funny because I hear people say everything is, my family, they got that coronavirus, and then you hear COVID-19. So I'm glad we got that straightened out. Go ahead, Dr. Lisa.
There's another way you can think about it is the virus causes a specific disease. So for instance, people who get chickenpox, there's a virus that causes chickenpox. It's a herpes virus that causes chickenpox. So this is coronavirus causing COVID-19. So COVID-19 just designates the infection or the impact from the virus.
Got you. So Dr. Celeste, why is this disease so deadly among African Americans?
Very complex answer to that question. The direct correlation is the prevalence of certain health conditions that are higher in African Americans, and these are things like hypertension, diabetes, obesity. These are things that have not been addressed, and COVID is actually bringing that out. The low socioeconomic status that some patients share, their home environment where they live, multi-generational household, the jobs that they have in the service industries, being essential workers, postal workers, and people that serve in various capacities wherein they're needed to open up the economy and are actually on the front lines dealing in the service industry, therefore being at a larger risk. You add to that the fact that a large percentage of them have to use public transportation, and we know that there's an increased risk of transmission depending on how you are transported to and from your home to work. Having to be in a crowded bus or a crowded subway has an impact on that. In addition to that, the limitation in healthcare and these disparities that we have known about that are prevalent in the African American community. So all of this has an impact in making this more deadly for African Americans and impacting African Americans in a greater way.
Would that be it? Go ahead, Dr. Lisa.
I also think we don't talk enough about how stressful it is to be Black in America. Because when you have a lot of stress, and for a lot of Black people, especially if you're poor, you have low levels of stress and that impacts your immune system. So I think part of the challenge is that we don't have the immune response. Like our immune systems aren't as healthy at baseline because we're chronically stressed. And that impacts your ability to fight off infections like coronavirus.
So with that being said, Dr. Lisa, what can people do, African Americans do to protect themselves against COVID-19?
Well, unfortunately, I know people are becoming fatigued with talking about the prevention measures recommended by the CDC for protection. And those are things like hand washing. It's still very important, even though we know coronavirus is expelled through the mouth and through the nose. Those droplets can land on things we touch. So we have to keep our hands clean. The social distancing is important because when someone coughs or sneezes, the droplets or the germs might move or fly up to 6 feet and sometimes even further from where the person sneezed or coughed. And wearing a mask, I know, is super controversial right now. For some reason, I don't really understand. But the thing about masks is if you have a cough or you sneeze, the mask is there to trap the germs. So wearing a mask, these things are all very important for preventing infection. But in the case of having an immune system that's chronically stressed, we have to do things that help offset that stress. And those are things like things that anybody can do. Usually we talk about dancing, or I talk about dancing because it's a form of exercise that everybody likes. And the foods you eat, if you eat a lot of sugary foods or drink sugary beverages like sweet tea, those things can impact your immune system. But other things you can do in addition to exercise and food, talk to your family members and friends, be in community as much as you can, praying, going to church, anything that makes you happy, listening to music. These are things that offset the impact of stress. And I'm sure Dr. Celeste has some fun ways to do that as well.
Yeah, it's funny when you were talking about eating right. You, Dr. Lisa, I can attribute to helping me get better in my eating. We worked on, Dr. Lisa and I worked on the Obama campaign together early on in 2008. We were in LA. And when you're working on a campaign, most people bring free food by pizza and fried chicken for the workers so that we could keep working. Well, Dr. Lisa was not having that. She said, no, no, no. And she provided healthier options for us. So I appreciate that, Dr. Lisa. And so when you bring up healthy food, I always get nervous around you because you do not play about the way people eat. But you brought up a good thing about wearing the mask. And so, Dr. Celeste, can you tell us the proper way to wear a mask? I see masks hanging down here. I see masks just covering the mouth. Can you tell us the proper way to wear a mask?
Okay. And I'm so glad that you asked that question, Meredith, because that is something that's, from a clinician or physician standpoint, it's a little bit challenging. It's a little frustrating because you want people to protect themselves. So in order to do that properly, you want to make sure it fits tightly across your nose and that it covers your entire nose and your mouth, so that if you cough, sneeze, laugh, talk, you don't emit a respiratory droplet. It actually is trapped by the mask. But wearing it below the nose does not protect you and does not protect the people immediately around you. Definitely wearing it under the chin does not do so. And I encourage you that if you're out and people are doing that, that you make sure that you are far, far away from those individuals, or even remind them, hey, may want to, push your mask up. There's a nice way to gently remind people, hey, let's live for humanity and protect the community.
So is it still important, ladies, to social distance right now? I mean, is it okay for me to hang out with my friends as long as they're just my friends and I think I know where they go every day? Is it still cool to like start hanging out at their homes and stuff like that?
A lot of people tell me this. Well, I know Joe, that's my boy, and he's okay, he's cool, but he doesn't know whether or not Joe has been around people with coronavirus infection. I know it's really hard and people are getting tired of this, but the only way we get out of this, because it's going to be a while before we get a vaccine, we have to continue, we have to stay the course. So yes, it still is important, especially if you don't know if people have come in contact with someone who's had coronavirus. And I encourage people, before it gets too cold, to find your friends and go outside. Meet up, with outdoor meetups, because nature is also healing as well. This is another way to reduce our stress. Go outside and be in nature. So unfortunately, yes, we still have to try and social distance or physical distance as much as possible.
Dr. Celeste, do you have anything to add to that part in terms of social distancing?
I would say absolutely, social distancing is so important. I encourage patients to be vigilant when they're out. And if you're at the grocery store or somewhere and someone's not doing it, feel free to, drop back and take your 6 feet if they're not giving it to you. In terms of visiting with friends and such, I've encouraged my patients to be very selective of the environments they go to. In other words, if you're going to visit your grandmother or your mother or someone, make sure that you get a test, especially if you're in a particular environment, and making sure that you're vigilant about who you do allow yourself to be around for any length of time. Outside settings, definitely, absolutely. One fun idea that we had was playing kickball, which is something I haven't played for over 20 years, probably at least, and forgot how to play a little bit. But fun activity, something outdoors, which provides a much decreased risk than an indoor gathering.
Yeah, I know my mom. I haven't seen my parents since June. And so for Thanksgiving, we are meeting in Alabama, but it's outside on their back patio deck. And so that's the best option. My parents are not allowing me in the house. I'm going to take a test before I go, but they are not allowing me in the house because of my schedule and being on these campaigns and stuff. So they said, no way. So, and I'm fine with that, whatever it does or whatever it takes to stop this, just evil disease. But moving ahead, do you all think that there's enough testing in the Black community? And a part two of that question, how often should we be getting tested? Either one of y'all can take that first.
Well, I think this varies from place to place, but in general, I would say no. And the reason I think we're challenged with the amount of testing is because the testing is not located in places where people are. People have to physically go to the testing versus having the testing come to them. And what I've noticed over the last several years with my work in community is that we are much more effective with reaching people, whether it's public health messaging, regular health messaging, or getting them to engage in a health activity if we make it more convenient and accessible to them. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges with the testing. The other challenge is, even if they get the test result, a lot of people are not in a position to follow all the public health guidance because they may live in a household with multiple people, and someone said, well, we only have one bathroom. How do you social distance in the house when there's only one bathroom? And these are great questions. So I think the challenges are not just about the testing itself, but what happens beyond testing.
Absolutely. And that's so good. Someone asked me this the other day. Is there another type of test people can take besides the one that goes up your nose. I mean, that's all I've had, and it's very uncomfortable. But is there another test that's out there that you all know about?
There are different kinds of tests. Unfortunately, they're not very widespread. So still the testing is largely what we call laboratory based. So they take the specimen, they send it to the lab, and most of the labs, especially the commercial labs, are doing this. They're processing with the nasal swab. I agree with you. I've had the test twice, and it is it is very unpleasant. I don't care what anyone says. But there are tests that are saliva based that have come onto the market. I think the challenge with a lot of the tests, whether it's the antibody tests or the test you're talking about, this is looking for the genetic pieces of coronavirus, is that they're not 100%. So it's important for us to be vigilant in addition to getting the testing done. So yes, I think down the road we will see much more pleasant forms of testing. But for right now, I think the majority is the unpleasant nasal swab you're talking about.
All right. So, Dr. Celeste, quick question. Is it wise, or do you tell your patients to get a flu shot this season? I know my boss, and I work for an elected official here in Georgia, and he is asking, staff and encouraging, not asking, but encouraging us to get flu shots because, we're going to be facing two, coronavirus or COVID-19 and the flu. So he is encouraging everyone to go out and get a flu shot. I've never had one personally, and I've never had the flu. Um, thank God. And so, do you think we should be out getting the flu shot? And Dr. Celeste, I'll start with you, and then Dr. Lisa, you can jump in.
Absolutely. I think that everyone over the age of 6 months who has not had an allergy to a flu shot in the past should absolutely get a flu shot, even if you've never had a flu shot before. And this is why. The question is not, should I get a flu shot? The question is, can you afford not to get a flu shot? And the answer to that is no, and this is why. We already know, we're already and have been battling one pandemic from March through now. Now we're entering into flu season, so we're getting ready to fight another respiratory viral illnesses whose symptoms kind of cross over into one another. In addition to that, death is a potential complication of it. So some people, and I've done urgent care for 18 years, so I understand and I've had conversations with patients ad nauseum. Dr. Celeste, I'm not getting that flu shot. It made me sick, or I feel like it gave me the flu. The first myth to dispel, it does not give you the flu. It may make you feel like you have a little bit of muscle aches for that day or so right after you get the flu shot. And typically, if you take Tylenol at the time that you get the flu shot, it will help to decrease the likelihood of you having those symptoms. Now, if we don't get the flu shot, getting the flu shot is a way to help protect your community and the people immediately around you. You mentioned that you're going to Thanksgiving with your parents this year, correct? And that you're on the campaign trail. So you're in a position wherein you're going to be around a lot of individuals, right? So you're going to be exposed, per se. You can actually get the flu or even have a mild case of the flu because you're young, you're healthy. And we've seen situations where someone young and healthy can get a mild case and they don't think that they're that sick, that can impact their grandmother or an older individual. So you're getting it for yourself, but you're really getting it for your family, you're getting it for the community, you're getting it for the people that you work with to help decrease the likelihood, because we've got to find some way to decrease, the likelihood of this pandemic that we're facing. And it's a real issue. It is definitely a real issue, because if you have one viral illness and you're fighting it off, your immune systems, Dr. Lisa already talked about your immune systems and ways to boost it and empower it, right? So if you kind of muzzle your immune system with flu or with COVID, it can make it easier, theoretically, for you to pick up another viral illness. And no one, I can imagine, will want to have COVID-19 and the flu at the same time.
No. You want to add anything to that, Dr. Lisa?
No, I think that's excellent. And I love what Dr. Celeste said about the flu vaccine not giving you the flu, because just last week we encountered a gentleman who, like you, Meredith, had never had the flu vaccine for that reason. And once we educated him, he walked right over to the van and he got his first flu shot. So I would encourage everyone this year in particular, because we're amidst a pandemic, to get the flu shot, because not just because you don't want to have two infections at once, but because it'll make it a lot easier for public health officials and healthcare providers who are taking care of people. They're already overburdened from COVID-19, and we don't want to make that any worse by having tons of flu cases as well. But I think this year we'll see less flu, just because people are wearing the things we do to prevent coronavirus infection also prevents the flu. So it'll be interesting to see at the end of the flu season if we've seen less flu this year.
Right now, we hit an all-time high yesterday. I think we had over 85,000 reported cases of the coronavirus. Do you all think that it's going to get worse before it get better? Are we on, or in your opinion, do you think that we are getting better? I know this show idea, the very show that we're on now today, Town Hall, this episode was your idea, Lisa, and you called me and I could hear the urgency in your voice that we have to get the message out to our community that this is nothing to play with. And so I'll start with you, Lisa. Do you think it's going to get worse before it gets better?
Well, we've been saying that since the beginning, and so I'm not going to make that mistake again and make a prediction, because the truth is we don't know. We actually thought this would be over by summer, and then in certain parts of the country, it's just been surging and ebbing since it started. So it's hard to know, but I suspect it might get worse only because people are becoming fatigued by the things we're asking them to do. And when they don't see people around them who are affected by coronavirus directly, it makes them buy into the misinformation that's out there that this is a hoax or it doesn't really matter for certain communities. So I suspect, based on all of that, it will get worse because we're now going indoors when it starts getting cold. So I am not hopeful that we're getting through to all the people we need to, but I hope I'm wrong.
Dr. Celeste, your thoughts on that as well?
Of course, we can't predict what's going to happen in the future. What I will share with you, at the COVID site that I am the medical partner with and the patients that I'm seeing, I am seeing higher percentages of people that come back positive in the last 2 to 3 weeks. As a matter of fact, about a 13% even increase in the number of people coming in to get tested because they're having symptoms. Some of that has to do with the fact that, it's October, it's rag weed season, so people have seasonal allergies, are starting to have nasal congestion, things like that. And let me just add, if someone has that, please get a test. Don't just say, oh, I know it's my allergies. Get the test to make sure that that's what it is. But because we're kind of heading into that season, we're seeing a larger percentage of people at our site just in the last couple of weeks that are coming back positive. So I unfortunately don't have a lot of hope that it's going to get better like in the next couple of months. I am concerned, very concerned, and very concerned that people should do the things that we know that we can do to help decrease, as Dr. Lisa said, the stress on the healthcare system by getting a flu shot, by just wearing the mask. And even if you don't want to do it, just do it. Just do it.
Yeah. Now, with that being said, do you think, or do you all think that racial bias has played a role in a lot of how African Americans have been treated throughout this disease? Like, I've read several articles in different publications about, many Blacks going to the emergency room and have been turned around, and then they go home and die from this disease. Do you think racial bias have played a role? And I'll start with you, Dr. Celeste, and then over to Dr. Lisa.
I absolutely do. There are studies that have shown that the disparities in healthcare that have not been addressed have directly linked and directly correlated. You can literally follow it back to disease processes that have been unaddressed, that, COVID's kind of bringing, pulling the wool out from over it, so to speak, for lack of a better term. In referring to patients and what patients have said to me, I have had patients come to me for a test and say that they went somewhere and someone would not test them. So I've been happy to be able to provide that service here in Birmingham, so that if anyone wants to get tested, they have a place to come to where they can be tested. I have had people share that with me. I have had patients tell me that they felt like there could have been more that could have been done to try and help with their symptoms, or help guide them in terms of what to do prior to them going home, or not feeling as though they received the level of treatment that they should have received. So I definitely have seen those patients and heard those complaints. And so in that realm, I do feel like the fact that there's a large group of people who feel that, oh, it's a hoax and won't wear a mask, what they do impacts other people, especially when you go out in the public. If you're not wearing a mask and you are sick and you feel like, hey, this is a hoax, and you just cough out in the air and in the atmosphere, and a lot of the just fighting that you see back and forth, even on social media, from one culture to another, and intermixed even within a culture. So all of this has played a factor and has served as a challenge to try and tackle this particular viral illness in our communities. And definitely it's been a challenge to me. So I would say absolutely, it definitely has played a factor.
And I think I wholeheartedly agree with Dr. Celeste about this. I think there are plenty of data to demonstrate the bias, the racial bias in healthcare. What has me concerned with this pandemic, though, is the longstanding bias in healthcare has created and even deepened the distrust in the Black community. So there's a gap between, there's a trust gap between the Black community and the healthcare system. So what happens is people choose not to go. And when they hear stories like Dr. Celeste was talking about, people go and they were turned away and then someone died as a result, then that further erodes the trust, and people say, well, I'm not going to even bother. And I interviewed a lady at the beginning of the pandemic. She was in her 80s. And she said, if I get sick, I'm just going to stay home and die. I would rather die here with dignity than go to the hospital and have them leave me in the corner to die. And I said, well, why do you think they would leave you in the corner to die? She said, well, because I'm 80 something years old, I'm a woman, and I'm Black. So if there isn't enough treatment to go around, they're certainly not giving it to me. And that just broke my heart, because this, her perspective is coming from the deep distrust of the healthcare system.
So how do y'all feel, just personally, about schools and churches starting to reopen? How do y'all feel about that?
I'm very conflicted about this.
Go ahead.
I'm really conflicted. I think, there's a saying, where you stand is where you sit. And I was one of the people in the beginning of the pandemic who was taking a long view approach of the shutdowns and saying, we already pre-pandemic had a lot of social isolation, a lot of mental health disorders like depression, and how much would this further drive people into depression? We already had trouble providing support for our homeless population. And because my work is primarily with underserved populations, that's the first population I was thinking about, and how detrimental this would be to that group. But if you step back and look at the larger impact, I think it's a challenge. It's a tough call, because there are some people calling for herd immunity naturally by just letting the virus rip through the community. But that also means a lot of people will die needlessly. So it's a challenge. It's a challenging one, because who's going to suffer most if we continue the way we're going now with the partial openings and so on? It's going to be the same people who are listening to us now, and we're concerned about the Black community, and particularly underserved, low-income Black communities.
Wow. So, Dr. Celeste, just how would you suggest, and I brought up Thanksgiving and how I'm going to go home with my family and we're going to sit outside, but we're approaching the holiday season. And we have so many people that's suffering with depression, loneliness. I'm such a social butterfly. So at the beginning of this, I was, being a single woman with no children, I was just about to go crazy being in the house every day. And I'm not a TV watcher. I don't sit around and watch movies much. So I read every book that I could find in my house, but I was just tired and my sleep was off. So being that people have to cope with so much mental things that's, going on now, how would you encourage us to celebrate the holidays for fun, with our family and friends and loved ones?
Well, the first thing that I would recommend is making sure that before you gather as a family, that everyone has a test. That's the first thing. So that, and has a test, within a 24, 48-hour window of you actually gathering. Most places, as Dr. Lisa said, it's different in different communities. I know here in Birmingham, most places can get you a test result that's a standard PCR test that can come back within 24 to 48 hours. So the first thing I would do is say, everyone get a test. The second thing is making sure, and it really should be the first, is making sure that everyone has a flu vaccine before you get together. Inevitably, in urgent care, every year where we start to see the spike of flu cases is right after the holidays. It's like clockwork. You can set a calendar to it. So number one, making sure you get a flu vaccine to decrease the likelihood of flu transmission. Number two, making sure that everyone gets a test, and then making sure that you wear your mask and that you're very careful. If you know that you're someone, you're someone that's out in the public in a lot of political arenas and meeting a lot of people every day, you may not want to hug your grandmother. You got the test, you're wearing a mask, and you're still not going to hug her. So you can be around her and have fun with her at a distance, but to not closely engage with her. If you're able to do what it is that you talked about and creating an outdoor environment, and I know that's more challenging in some areas than other, which is part of the reason why some northern states are already starting to see higher numbers, because it's colder up there, so people are coming inside socializing, whereas for months, a lot of people were doing that outside. They move activities to outside. So if you're in an environment or you're in a place where you can have an outdoor gathering together with people, then do that. If you're someone that works in a highly risk area or job, you definitely want to make sure that you get tested, and definitely want to make sure you limit, if any, hugging, touching, etc. And in making sure that the environment that you all are in is very, very clean as well.
Okay, that's great information. And another little fun question I have, and the reason why my friends and I debate about this: hand sanitizer versus water and soap. Which one is better, or does it matter?
I'm
Dr.
a
Lisa?
huge fan of soap water. Soap and water all day long. I'm a huge fan. My challenge with hand sanitizers, even from the beginning, is that a lot of them, they are marketed as antibacterial. And it turns out we actually have bacteria we need on our skin to protect us from other infections. So I think we get rid of a lot more of those bacteria when we are focused on these antibacterial products and hand sanitizers. But hand sanitizer is 60%, at least 60% alcohol based is the recommendation. So still very effective, but for me will never be better than good old soap and water.
Dr. Celeste, I think you were trying to say the same thing too.
I'm a fan of, if you have to be out and you're in an environment where you don't have anything that you can do, by all means, the hand sanitizer with 60% alcohol. However, I agree wholeheartedly with Dr. Lisa. I'm a fan of the hand washing. The first thing I do when I come home after I've been out is take my clothes off, drop them in the laundry, and wash my hands. It's so, so important, because we've been touching doorknobs. We've been doing all kinds of things with our hands. But yes, I'm a fan of the warm water and soap.
Before we close out, is there a difference between the masks? Can we wear our little, name brand mask that we wear at home, or should we be looking for a mask with, whatever it is. I mean, is there a difference with it, or it's just a mask? A mask? Should we just throw on whatever we have? In my car, I have probably about 70 masks. I have them all in the glove compartment, all on my seats, under the seats. I have masks, and I have everywhere I go. People give me different masks. A political mask with my favorite politicians' names on, masks that say vote, whatever. So doesn't matter in terms of the mask.
This is a tough one for me because I think the good old surgical mask is tried and true. It's easy to breathe through. And when I see people with their mask hanging down, it's usually because it creates some discomfort trying to breathe through a thick cloth mask. And so for me, I want whatever is most likely to be successfully used with people. So I want to encourage people to try the surgical mask because the cloth mask, as someone told me, well, I don't like to wear it because it sweats too much. And then if I have a beard, it's hard with the mask and my beard. And people are just having to negotiate and navigate too much with a lot of the cloth masks. But they still can be effective. But I want the solution that the most people are likely to use with the least hassle. And we've been using surgical masks in the medical setting for decades, so if not centuries. So if people have access to a surgical mask, that would be my priority or my preference.
Right. And Dr. Celeste, quick question. I thought about this as we get ready to close. I've been to probably 3 or 4 weddings. I think I was in 1 or 2 this summer. And what I see, and people do this all the time, they've been getting together, and I see it on Facebook, I see it on Instagram. Everybody get together for a picture, and everybody's mask is in their hand, and then they smile, and then they say, "Oh, we put our mask right back on quickly after the picture." Is that safe? And it seems like Dr. Lisa want to jump in after you, Dr. Celeste, but is that safe to do? When you take your picture, do you just need to keep your mask on, or is it okay to take the mask off for a second, take your picture, and then throw the mask back on? Dr. Celeste.
So my answer to this question is that obviously, if you're in close proximity to someone, you are taking a certain degree of a risk. So that if you're going to take the picture, take your mask off for just a second, literally 5 to 10 seconds, and immediately put it back on. But is that safe to do? That's a very interesting question, because the question is anyone that's with you, have they been ill? Have they been sick? Who is this group? If you're doing it with a bunch of people you don't know where they've been. So that's a complicated question to me, because I personally am very selective. I'm extremely selective about the environment that I allow myself to be in. And typically, if I know that someone is at risk, and especially because I do testing people, and you're a physician, so people kind of treat you a little bit different, like, can we do this? Can we do that? So the answer to that question is you have to realize that there's a certain degree of risk that you incur by taking that mask off. And I've had people say, okay, just hold your breath for 5 seconds. No one talk, no one say anything. Now, if you're sitting there, you've taken your mask off and you're talking and you're dialoguing, etc., you're increasing the risk of spread if anyone has COVID-19 that's there. But absolutely, your safest to keep your mask on. Just realize that if you take it off for that moment, you are increasing the risk.
Thank you.
I
Dr.
agree
Lisa,
with
anything to add to that?
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Celeste. And people have asked me this question also. And I'd like to give practical advice because, people will do what they feel they need to do. So if you want to take a group picture, everyone has to hold their breath, because how is coronavirus transmitted? It's transmitted via exhalation through your nose and through your mouth. So if you're going, you have to take this picture and it's so important, everybody has to hold their breath while they take the picture and then put the mask on before they exhale. It's hard.
Wow. Yeah. So in 10 seconds, and I'm going to start with you, Dr. Lisa, and end with Dr. Celeste. Final thoughts on COVID-19, anything that you want to say that we did not cover. 10 seconds.
I just want people to hold on and hang in there, because we have the ability to end this pandemic. And we just have to continue because we know the public health measures work, and it won't be with us forever, but we all have to do our part.
Thank you. Dr. Celeste.
Yeah, so the thing that I would want to encourage everyone to do, wear your mask even though you're tired of doing it. Get a flu vaccine even if you never have, or even if you don't want to, do it anyway. It's for the love of humanity. And then number 3, please address any health concerns that you may have. If you're someone that has a history of high blood pressure, diabetes, hypertension, please have those things addressed so that your maintenance level of care is adequate, so that you don't increase the risk or likelihood of having a complication to COVID-19 if you should become infected with COVID-19.
Thank you. And as we end, I always like to end my show with the your favorite Black business of the week. So Dr. Celeste, what is your favorite Black business of the week?
My favorite Black business of the week would be my sister's Pure CBD Therapy. She owns a CBD store. She is a pain management physician who came up with her own line of products to address pain needs in individuals, and she's in Alpharetta, Georgia.
Oh, thank you. Dr. Lisa, your Black business of the week.
Oh, well, that's easy. That's the Lady Clipper. It's my barbershop here in Washington, D.C. at 1514 U Street Northwest. They do a great job on anybody.
Thank you. And my Black business of the week is Barshari. I hope I'm saying it right. Bychari. She is the creator of the boat necklace that our former First Lady had on at the Democratic National Convention when she gave that awesome speech. I know that these necklaces have been on back order for a while. I finally got mine. It's absolutely stunning. I love it. It's really cute and dainty. You can get it in 2 sizes. So thank you so much. Ladies, Dr. Celeste, Dr. Lisa, thank you so much for being on Town Hall today. I have personally learned so much from you all, and I appreciate you all taking time out of your busy schedules to share with our community. And for everyone that have tuned in today, thank you so much for watching another episode of Town Hall. Like I've said before, we are fighting several pandemics at this time. COVID-19, police brutality. We are fighting racial discrimination. We cannot get weary. The voting is right around the corner. If you have not voted, it's no time to get sad, no time to get lazy, no time to, it's time to vote. We got to vote. No more question about it. Your mind should be made up. Let's go vote. Voting is November the 3rd. Get out there and go vote. Take someone with you. And another thing that I learned today, and I'm going to commit to doing it tomorrow, I am going to get a flu shot. I've never gotten a flu shot before. I've never had the flu. But for the sake of our community, I am going to get a flu shot tomorrow. So I am encouraging each and every one of you that is listening today to go get a flu shot. Please. Also go take the COVID-19 test. Know your status so we can continue to protect our family. Also continue social distancing and wear your mask. No excuse. Thank you so much for tuning in to Town Hall. I look forward to seeing you all again next week. Thank you. What can African Americans do to protect themselves against COVID-19?
I am seeing higher percentages of people that come back positive in the last 2 to 3 weeks.
We have to get the message out to our community that this is nothing to play with.
I just want people to hold on and hang in there because we have the ability to end this pandemic. It won't be with us forever, but we all have to do our part.